We will be restricting your comments to 5 minutes. If you wish to speak a second time, you will be given a second speaking opportunity after everyone wishing to speak regarding the proposed bylaw has spoken once. Anyone wishing to speak a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. To speak again, please raise your hand to be added to the next speakers list. So this public hearing is a statutory process convened for the purpose of hearing from the public on the proposed bylaws. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. If you go off topic, as chair, I will ask you to return to appropriate subject matter or stop your presentation. Members of council may ask you questions to clarify points that may not have been clear to them. Council will not enter into debate with anyone. The function of this hearing is for council to listen to submissions brought forward. After this public hearing, council may, without further notice or hearing, give whatever effect to the proposed bylaw it deems appropriate. The planner will now provide an overview of the bylaw, after which the applicant will speak. Sven, over to you.
Thank you. Tonight we'll be presenting for public hearing a rezoning application for 5547 Trail Avenue. The applicant is City State Consulting, which is also the owner. This rezoning application is intended to facilitate the subdivision of 5547 Trail Avenue. This rezoning application only applies to the subject property, and the current zone of R2A only applies to this current property. It requires amendments to the R2A zone in order to allow a small lot subdivision. So the proposal, the current zoning would facilitate a laneway house accessory to a single family dwelling. However, an application has been made to allow a small lot subdivision with a minimum lot size of 350 square meters to allow the construction of a new single family dwelling in lieu of a laneway house. This would result in a new title for a fee simple lot rather than an accessory laneway house, which would belong on the same title as a single family home. The context for the OCP designation on this property, the property is designated the downtown village infill area. The R2A zone was developed with an initial application, and it intended to implement the policies for the village infill area. This area supports infill development, including small lot subdivision on properties with rear lane access. The OCP specifically calls out 350 square meters as the minimum lot size for a small lot. And that's essentially based on the existing lots being predominantly 700 square meters in this area. So in order to accommodate a lot split, that would result in two 350 square meter properties. And up to 60% floor area ratio is supported in the OCP as well. The proposed amendments in the bylaw, there's a few additional amendments that staff are proposing. The applicant did request a 350 square meter minimum lot size. In conjunction with this, to accommodate this type of development, staff are proposing a few additional amendments, including that a laneway house and duplex be restricted to lots over 700 square meters. And essentially this takes care of somebody subdividing a lot to 350 square meters, and then they wouldn't be able to build a duplex or a laneway house on a lot that small. We've also increased the maximum floor area ratio to 50%. And this is essentially to recognize that on a small lot of 350 square meters, a limited floor area ratio results in a building that's not feasible. There's also an error being corrected in the lot coverage regulation where the word said 40 and the number description was 45 and the intent was for it to be 45. We're also introducing a minimum lot width of 9 meters. And while this isn't pertinent to the particular application at hand, it is intended to indicate that there would be support for small lot subdivision within the rest of the village infill area in the form of narrow lots in the mid-block sections. And additionally, staff are proposing a density bonus provision in the bylaw. In essence, that requires the owner to provide a $5,000 amenity contribution in exchange for the right to subdivide to 350 square meters. And this is intended to offset some of the additional costs that a higher density development in the downtown area would incur. For example, this amount would be split between the Affordable Housing Reserve and the Community Amenity Reserve. It could go towards funding downtown amenities such as playgrounds, et cetera, that aren't covered by development cost charges. As a comparison, a laneway house under the current zoning and configuration of a 700 square meter lot, the existing regulations would allow for a 90 square meter plus 37 square meters for a garage for a total of about 127 square meters. Under the proposed regulations of a small lot subdivision with up to 50% floor area ratio, it would be 175 square meters. So a slightly more intensive form of development, reflective that this is a fee simple lot and consists of an independent single family dwelling, a primary residence. The height would be slightly higher, 8.5 meters compared to the 6 meter height for a laneway house. And this would translate to a 2-story single family dwelling. Lot coverage remains the same at 45%. So there's no overall increase in the amount of coverage of buildings in the area. The setbacks are effectively the same between a single family home and a laneway home. A secondary suite is not permitted in a laneway house. However, with a small lot house, a secondary suite would be permitted. Parking, a laneway house would require 1 space along with 2 spaces for the single family home. On a small lot, you'd be looking at 2 spaces for the single family portion of the home and an additional space for the suite, should a suite be provided. A development permit for form and character is required for either type of building. So a laneway house would have to go through a development permit process to see if the proposal meets the form and character guidelines. And this is something that's presented to and approved by council. And for a small lot house on a small lot, the same process would apply. So it's an additional level of control that council has over the form and character of any future building. Staff are proposing as a condition of adoption, we've presented the requirement that Starfish Lane be paved in its entirety along the frontage of the property. Typically, owners are only required to pave their half of the road. In this case, because it is the end of the lane and the interface to Trail Avenue, we would require the entire lane to be paved at the sole expense of the applicant. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Sven? All right. Thank you, Sven. So we're going to turn over to the applicant. And as the applicant, you will have 10 minutes to present. So we will bring you into the as a panelist.
Okay, may I start?
Yes, go ahead, and we will start the clock.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gaëtan Royer, and I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about our project and the zoning bylaw text amendment. My wife, Zoe, and myself are the owners of 5547 Trail. I'm also the CEO of a city-state planning and design practice with an office in Sechelt. In 2018, we purchased the property, a corner property across from the fire hall. And I'm going to, okay. The existing house is located here. It's only 924 square feet, and it has a huge backyard. that was ideal for a playground or for the Bethel Church daycare, but not ideal for our use. The top left image here is the house the way it was when we bought it. The image on the right shows, as you can see, a very large rear yard behind the fence, and it's an elevated yard. There was a very nice tree along trail. We didn't remove it, although a comment is made about that. It was taken out by crews working on the retaining wall that we see at the bottom. At the bottom as well, you can look, this photograph was taken in December. You see how large this rear yard is. That vacant space certainly is large enough, in my professional opinion, for a modest single family home, which is what we propose. Often a subdivision requires the demolition of existing structures, and the layout of this property allows us to divide it into two parcels, subject to council's approval, without having to demolish the existing house. While we were working with staff through all the steps required leading to today, we renovated the existing house. It's 91 years old, and there was a lot of stuff that needed to be fixed and upgraded. And with these costly renovations, we feel we extended its life by a solid 30 years. As newcomers to Sechelt, about 2 years now, we respect this community as much as we respect its heritage. There are 7 changes that are proposed in the bylaw. And number 1 is essentially what we asked for. That's what we submitted to the city, to reduce the minimum lot size to 350 meters square. And we selected that number because it's in your official community plan, in your OCP. And we hope that as council deliberates, our original request is not going to be lost. If you disagree with parts of this bylaw, like decreasing the minimum lot width to 9 meters, we hope that you will still allow the subdivision of the properties that are at the end of a block like ours. Number 2 makes sense. Number 3 is a bit questionable. Many municipalities allow laneway houses at the back of narrow lots. So a house and a laneway house fit quite well on a long block within the 120 feet. Number 4 and 5 are good, and I think they will help Sechelt match what most of the municipalities are doing for this kind of small lot subdivision. Number 6 doesn't apply to us, but again, narrow lots are often the best way to introduce gentle densification in an established neighborhood. You end up with cute little houses in character with older neighborhoods. Regarding number 7, we wholeheartedly agree. Allowing a new dwelling unit in a community means that a new family will move in and take advantage of existing parks, library, and other services. And these facilities need capital improvement. So we certainly agree. We hope to families will choose between a laneway house and a subdivision for very personal reasons. This is something we shared with our application before. Not all families are in the same circumstances, and we know that we could have selected to build a laneway house. It would have been easier, but it didn't fit our family circumstances. Laneway houses are the best choices for codependent relationships, having a senior, another family member living on the same lot within the same property is a good form of tenure. And using rental, the laneway house as rental housing, as many people do, is a good way. It's a good mortgage helper. The real estate impact is that you end up with selling to a narrower market demographic, people who are interested in buying a main house and laneway house. Small lot subdivision does not have this codependency attached to it. It can be sold separately. But the form of tenure, because they are small, lend itself very well to rental. So I won't go over the rest of this chart in the interest of time, but in our original application, we showed connections to water and sewer straight out to Trail Avenue mains. Obviously, since then, the district built a retaining wall, which we didn't know about at that time. And we're now proposing to have the services connected using the lane for that. And we certainly agree with the proposal for us to pave the entire lane, both sides of the lane. It's so narrow, it doesn't make sense to pave only one half. We did a significant amount of public consultation. We want to be good neighbors. We reached out to our neighbors. We used social media to invite comments from the community at large about our project, and people thanked us for that. Last summer, my wife went door to door in the neighborhood, and she did it once on the weekend, once midweek, again, to reach out to our neighbors. We prepared a draft brochure and we shared it with staff for comments. I believe it was sent to council as well by my office. Then we dropped these brochures off to all of our neighbors along Dolphin and Mermaid. Everyone was given my phone number and my email address along with the district's contact information in that brochure. A couple of weeks ago, we put up this large poster and we put it up on the fence outside our property facing Trail Avenue, again with my phone number and email address. And that poster resulted in several calls and emails saying things like, thanks for sharing, nice looking project. And we heard a lot of positive comments throughout our outreach. We were a bit surprised to see a few comments that were posted on the district's website today. We appreciate them. We think it's always valuable to hear from neighbors. We wish we had heard about it earlier, because at this juncture, it's hard to do anything about it, but I'll try in this response to address some of these items. Thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for their input. We did not cut trees, the tree along Trail. It was removed for the retaining wall. Well, actually, we planted 6 trees and 20 flowering shrubs, my wife reminded me. We feel very safe. Somebody said that maybe it's not a good idea to build housing next to the fire hall. Personally, I think it's great. The fire department is a great neighbor to have. We chose 350 meters because that's the number that was mentioned in the OCP in the discussion about small lots. So the fact that somebody comments it's not in the OCP, we appreciate the research that people have done, but maybe they missed that mention in the Seashell Village area section of the OCP. We propose more parking than the zoning bylaw requires. We propose that both owners place garbage at the lane. Now that's what makes the subdivision mid-block make sense as a side-by-side because it becomes too difficult for people to go around and use the lane appropriately. And it kind of turns the lane into the front of houses. So I think it makes sense that the staff decided to piggyback on our request to change the minimum lot size to also address the side-by-side lot subdivision. We have no intent of having a secondary suite, and we also agree, as I said, to paving the full lane. In closing, I would like to thank staff for their cooperation throughout the process. Senior planning and engineering staff came to the property to discuss our application. Site visits are visit at somebody's home are a rare level of service in municipalities, and I commend your staff for that. They offered excellent suggestions that we followed. And I also appreciate the support of council for the first 2 readings. And at this point, I would like to urge you to support the change of the minimum lot size to 350 meters. And I certainly encourage you to support all the changes to the zoning bylaw that staff are recommending. And I know that there's a zoning bylaw rewrite that's in progress, but I think this particular issue is one that's going to really help people reinvest, particularly in downtown Sechelt, but reinvest in Sechelt in general. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Council, any questions of Gaetan Royer? Okay, I don't see any questions. Thank you, Gaetan. We'll move you back into the gallery.
Thank you.
Floria, are you going to move Gaetan? Okay, while that is happening, we will now invite persons in the gallery to provide verbal submissions regarding the bylaw amendments. And I will first call for submissions from those who've signed onto the speakers list. So we do not have anybody on the speakers list at this point. As far as I know, nobody on the speakers list.
There are no speakers on the speakers list, Madam Mayor.
All right. So we invite those in the gallery to raise your hand if you'd like to be added to the speakers list. All right. If you've all signed in via Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says raise hand. If you click on raise hand, we can add you to the speakers list. I notice a number of you in the gallery have submitted written submissions, and we have those already. So I'm going to ask for the first time, is there anyone who wishes to speak to this matter? If you wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. I'm going to ask 3 times. If no one comes forward, we will then adjourn the meeting. So I've asked for a first time. So for a second time, I'll ask again, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this matter? Floria, can you check the email account and see if any correspondence has come in? Because once we close this hearing, we will not accept any more submissions.
There is no correspondence in the planning inbox, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So for the final time, I will ask, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this matter? All right, seeing no hands up, no one on the speakers list, I will adjourn this public hearing and remind everyone that no further information is to come forward to council regarding this proposed bylaw. Thank you, staff. Thank you, council. Good night.